A new look Ireland take on France in Paris. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Defending champions France in Paris, going to be a tough ask, I think, for Ireland to turn them over. France have looked, so good the past couple of years, and the fact as well that they beat Ireland, away last year as well is going to make it tough. But this one, France versus Ireland, it's on Thursday, 5th of February, 2026. It's in the Stade de France. Kickoff is 8:10. That is Irish time. So, check your local listings for that. Last year in Dublin, Ireland 27, France 42. And, that was France on their way to lifting the title. And that was a big step for them towards that. 2024 then, France 17, Ireland 38. So, Ireland winning the last time that they played France in the Six Nations over in France. But, I think the relative positions of the teams, has kind of changed since then. Like Ireland have certainly dipped and France have come on a bit since then. Odds, France 6-1 on favourites to win the game. Ireland 7-1 to win. So, the bookie's not giving them much chance. And then the draw is 28-1. So, looking at that, you got to think that, France, very clear favourites for this game. And there's a reason for that as well. You look at, how the French teams have been doing in Europe recently. Especially the likes of Bordeaux, just absolutely turn up, defending champions of the Champions Cup, and number one seeds going through this year as well. And you've got other teams as well, Toulon, producing some good performance. Toulouse, always good, and that they've got fantastic players there as well. And then you look at Ireland and you see that, Leinster not looking all that impressive through the pool stages. Munster not even qualifying, for the knockout stages of the Champions Cup, dropping down into the Challenge Cup, where both Ulster and Connacht are this year as well. Although, in fairness, Ulster, have looked very good in the URC this year. So there's a positive there from that. But I think all around kind of negative for Ireland. And injuries as well on top of that as well. But, we'll have a look at the teams now and we'll see, how we think things are going to go from there. So starting with the French team, front row is Jean-Baptiste Gros, Julien Marchand and Dorian Aldehieri is the front row. And that's a very impressive, very impressive front row. You obviously got no Uni Antonio in there. Sad news for him, diagnosed with a heart condition and had to basically immediately retire from rugby altogether. So wish him all the best. He's going to be certainly a miss for France, but they've got such depth there. They can just bring in fantastic players like Aldehieri, and it feels like, it's not going to affect them as much as certainly Ireland's propping situation is. Then second row, Charles Olivon and Michael Guillard in there. So, again, quality in there. And also just the fact that, the quality that can't get into the team too. Back row then, Francois Cross, Oscar Jesus, and Anthony Jolanche back there as well. And, again, just absolute quality in there, but also players who are at the top of the game. And it's why, it's why France kind of left out some big names as well, because there are players, who are just putting their hands up and saying, listen, I'm a better bet. And, they've gone with that this year, like, some big names missing out because of it. But the players that are in there, it's hard to argue that they shouldn't be there. And then you got Antoine Dupont there, at 9. Certainly the best 9 in the world, and arguably the best player in the world as well. And, he's going to be tough for any team to deal with, and Ireland just have to be so on it when he's around, because he can just make things happen from nothing. And then you got Mathieu Jalabert outside him at 10 as well, who's been in fantastic form. Louis Bielbiari, who is just going from strength to strength on that left wing. Midfield, you got Yoram Mofana and Nicolas Deporter. And, Deporter is someone who's really come on in the past year or so. And, dislodged Fiku now there, and Fiku not even in the squad. And this guy has just come on. Like, somebody mentioned him to me and said, he's gonna be right up there in the next couple of years, like a couple of years ago, and you can see absolutely right about that. And then Theo Atasogbe on the right wing, no Penaud in the squad at all. And again, it's because the guys that are there, they're starting ahead of them, and even guys who are in the wider squad are just in fantastic form. And sometimes you look at squads and you kind of think about like players that are left out. Oh, why was he left out because of this guy? Whereas with the French squad, I think you can kind of see why they were, because the guys that are in there are in just fantastic form. And then you got 15 Tom Ramos, another guy, brilliant on the counter, but also, his ability from the tee as well. Like, Ireland have to be squeaky clean, because, if France aren't scoring tries, which I think they will be, but on top of that, you're going to have Ramos from the boot as well, stretching out that lead and just making it difficult, I think, for Ireland, especially if France get their tails up and get ahead a little bit, and then you have Ramos just ticking over trees and, stretching that lead a little bit, just making it more difficult for Ireland to come back. Then we move on to the bench, which, one thing I have to say is, in terms of the formats of these matchday squads now, we talk about how important the bench is, but seemingly in terms of these graphics, they're trying to make the replacements smaller and smaller all the time in terms of the font they're using. It actually makes it difficult for someone like me whose eyesight isn't great. But front row replacements, we got Mauvaka, Neti and Montagna. So again, just quality coming off the bench. Then you got Aradou and Miafu there, and then we got Noki as well. So a 6-2 split. And then we have Baptiste Seren, or Saran, sorry, I think his name is produced. And, he's been in fantastic form as well. And you have the pawn there, and he's an absolutely fantastic, like, out of this world number 9. But then you look at the players, like Saran and, a few others below him as well. You could, France could go down to 4th or 5th choice number 9 and still have one of the best 9s in the competition. That's how much depth they have there. And then we have Calvin Gorgu covering the rest of the back line. Obviously, there might be a bit of if they get an injury, there might be some shuffling around to happen there. But yeah, it's a fantastic team, and it's hard to see them at home first up, absolutely up for it, looking to defend their title as well. It's hard to see Ireland catching them cold. Ireland, I think, are going to have to play out their skins to beat them. You would think if these guys play to their potential, the game is won, really. Then we look at the Ireland team then, and front row we got Jeremy Lockman, Dan Sheehan and Thomas Clarkson. So, on the loosehead side, we got Porter, Paddy McCarthy and Jack Boyle, all injured. So they're the numbers 1 to 3 in terms of the pecking order. And then on the tight head side, then we have Furlong injured as well and not available. So, you have to say that the guys that are there, like Lockman, going to be under a lot of pressure given that he is fourth choice. And then Clarkson as well. Clarkson hasn't been going great in the scrum for Leinster this season, had some trouble in Champions Cup games as well. So, those two boys really have to step up to the plate if Ireland are going to get, anything out of this, because if the scrum is getting absolutely mullered every time there's a knock on, it's going to be a long evening, I think, for Ireland. But if they can somehow lock out the scrum for Ireland, then, it gives them a chance to maybe get parity in that area, or maybe not even necessarily parity, but just creak a little bit, but kind of hold up, wouldn't be too bad, And then I think, like, looking at the rest of the forwards to pick, they really have gone kind of like a power game, because you've got Joe McCarthy with Ty Byrne there in the second row. Byrne, recent times has kind of been playing 6 instead. And then you'd have maybe a James Ryan in there, who's more of a kind of a workhorse. But you've got those two in there, and then you've got Keane Prendergast as well, coming in 6. And we got Josh Van der Fleer and Caelan Doris there. So one thing you would expect is that, especially with Keane Prendergast in there, that the line-out should be competitive on the French ball, because he is so good at getting up there and nicking opposition ball. You would expect as well with McCarthy and Byrne in the second row that maul defense should be pretty decent as well, because both of them have that ability to get in amongst it and cause turnovers in the maul. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ireland do if France have lineouts in the 22, because you have the choice of putting someone like Prendergast up to compete and potentially either stealing the line out or just making it messy ball for France and maybe stripping a bit of momentum away from them that way. Or are they going to stay on the ground and trust that, one of McCarthy or Byrne is going to get in there and disrupt them all? So that's going to be interesting to see which way they go with that, or if they mix it up. And then, the balance in the back row with Prendergast, Van der Fleer and Doris, I think is going to be interesting as well to see how obviously Van der Fleer and Doris very used to playing with each other. With Keane Prendergast, not so much. But I do think, it certainly is like a new look pack, albeit with some kind of old heads in there as well. But, it feels like these guys really have to deliver, especially, on the physicality front. They've got to be able to go forward for Ireland, because if they can't go forward off first and second phase, then again, it's going to be a real struggle, I think, for Ireland to get anything going. Into the backs then, now we've got James Gibson Park. Everybody knew, like, if he was fit, he was going to be the starting 9. Not so much though at 10. We've got Sam Prendergast starting, and I think genuinely there were 3 contenders for that spot. Obviously, himself, Jack Crowley, and Harry Byrne, who has had a really good start to the season with Leinster, especially compared to Prendergast. Playing instead of him sometimes on some of the big games. He had that moment as well against La Rochelle where he took the ball away from Prendergast for what proved to be the game-winning penalty as well. And, so he had to have been pretty close to either being on the bench or, getting into the starting lineup as well. The fact, I think, that Jack Crowley has had a bit of a dip in form recently, and Prendergast has been, starting to look better just in terms of running the Leinster backline as well, was probably enough to get him to start there. But going to be interesting to see through the tournament, whether is he now backed as the number one, or is it still going to be the case of he's switching out with Crowley, and we end up at the end of this Six Nations still not knowing who the number 110 is? That's certainly a possibility, I think. Then we have Jacob Stockdale on the left wing, so no James Lowe there. And, Lowe hasn't been in brilliant form recently. Stockdale has, both try scoring and, just creative as well in terms of getting scores for other people this season. So, really good to see him in there. Then we got Stuart McCluskey at 12. We knew Bundy Aki was, excluded from the squad, and, Henshaw is unavailable. So, it was kind of nailed on. I think that McCluskey was going to start this, and then he's partnered by Gary Ringrose. There were obviously other options there, but I think in terms of Andy Farrell, if Ringrose is available to him, I think he's going to pick him. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes, because his role at Leinster has kind of changed, and he hasn't played all that much for Leinster either. So back in an Ireland shirt, he's going to kind of feel a bit better, and maybe we're going to see him a bit more on the attacking side of things. And then we have right wing is Tommy O'Brien. So no Mac Hansen at the minute. Obviously, Calvin Nash was probably the other option there, but I think Tommy O'Brien has been in really good form so far this season. He's got pace, and he's really tenacious in terms of his tackling and his defence as well. And then we have Jamie Osborne there at full back. Obviously, I think the other option in the squad at the minute would have been Jacob Stockdale. Keenan fractured his thumb in training there, so he wasn't available. But you look at a lot of the changes that were made by Ireland before we come to the bench, like Jeremy Loughman. We start with him. So Jeremy Loughman, if one of Porter, Paddy McCarthy or Boyle were available, probably doesn't start. Clarkson, if Furlong is available, probably doesn't start. Although for me, I think we should be starting Clarkson even if Furlong is available, and Furlong should be the guy coming off the bench at this stage if we're looking towards the next World Cup. Then Keane Prendergast, I think, is obviously in there, not because of injuries. And then we got Jacob Stockdale. I think he's another guy that's in there on form rather than because of injury. Because if you think Lowe certainly could have been picked, but he was picked instead. Stuart McCluskey, I think if Henshaw is available, maybe Henshaw Ringrose is the partnership, given that, they play there together at Leinster. Although, I'm kind of more excited by this. But again, I still think that, for me, the two players who've been playing at centre this year so far in Irish rugby, who've really excited me, have been Tector at Leinster and Postlethwaite at Ulster. But I think though at least one of them is in the Ireland 15 squad, I think. McCluskey, I love the fact that, he's strong carry and always looking for offloads. And I just wish that the other players around them in the Ireland squad would be kind of more wide to that, like running lines to potentially take those offloads as well. Let's see if Gary Ringrose can do that. And then Tommy O'Brien, I think if Mac Hansen is fit, I think he starts instead of him. And then I think if Keenan was fit, he starts at fullback ahead of anyone as well. So it feels like a lot of those changes are maybe somewhat enforced, but because of them, we're seeing players who in form getting a chance. But you wonder how much of a chance they're going to get. Like, if Ireland get destroyed in this, does it mean that immediately people like Lowe come straight back into the team, or what happens there? So that's going to be interesting to see on this. Like, if Ireland kind of aren't anywhere near France. What do they do? But we won't really see that because I think it's Italy up next. So you'd expect changes for that anyway. But it's again, like once they kind of the third round, I think we'll see where things stand with that. But then on the bench, then we have Ronan Kelleher, Michael Milne and Finlay Bealham as the front row. So Michael Milne, he went away, he left Leinster feeling like that, he was number 4 in the pecking order there, and I wasn't going to do him any favours for Ireland. And then, he went to Munster, been playing well in Munster, and he's kind of got his reward here, albeit probably through injuries again. So like, and given that the players who were injured, are all at Leinster, it's possible, being at Leinster, he might have saw a bit more game time, towards the end of this season as well in big games because of those guys being out. But, it's good to see him in there. I think, he's a really good player, and he's one of those players as well. Not quite at the level of like a Gavin Coombs or like Sean Jansen, who's been brilliant at Connacht this year, but being able to get over the line from close range. I think coming off the bench, if it's a tight game and Ireland are camped on the line, he could be a match winner in this one as well. Finlay Bealham, he's been the backup tight head for such a long time. I think he's kind of dipped a bit in terms of his form, but for me, I think there were times where he should have been starting ahead of Furlong, and it only happened when Furlong kind of had extended injuries. But now I think he's kind of in the right place. I think Clarkson is the right guy to be in there. But I think Bealham, off the bench, I think will be great. James Ryan, off the bench is kind of an interesting one. Like, for me, I might have gone for, unfortunately, Ahern, was in the squad and now he's unavailable. But I would have gone with maybe a bit more youth on the bench. Because James Ryan, he's kind of a workhorse. I don't think he's going to come on and change the game for you. He's just going to, come on and be very solid. I think, hitting rucks, clearing out, etc. Jack Conan really is somebody who can be a point of difference. And, he might come on for, it could be anyone really from 4 to 6, like if, let's say you come on for Byrne, then Prendergast moves into the second row. He goes to 8 and Doris goes to 6 is what I imagine is going to happen, is that, Doris will move to 6 once he comes on. But yeah, he's a decent player to come off the bench. He's really skillful, and once he's that type of player that you want him coming on at that time when the game is kind of breaking up a little bit, and there's a bit more room there, and it's a bit easier because he's got a great offloading game. He's got a great running game as well. Good in the carry too, in contact as well. Able to get his hands free, to give that pass as well. And, for me, the perfect scenario coming off the bench would be himself and Sheehan. But I think at the moment, like, Sheehan kind of has to start anyway. But I think Sheehan would have more impact off the bench than Kelleher. But I can see why you'd want Sheehan on at the start because he's such a good player. Then we've got Nick Timoney as well, to come off the bench there. And he's another guy, who can kind of play that type of role as well. So we will have, or we should have certainly impact off the bench in the carry and in terms of like players who have those soft hands or are able to kind of facilitate other players as well. Then we've got Craig Casey, who I would expect to kind of just change things up a little bit in terms of, I think he's a bit more of a running threat than Gibson Park, although Gibson Park certainly can do it. It's just that Gibson Park, I think his point of difference is the speed of his pass. But Casey, I think, will be a bit more of a threat, like keeping France honest, like on the pillars and stuff around rucks and things like that. He can kind of get himself a little bit in trouble with his back chat to referees at times. If things are going against Ireland, you could see maybe penalties getting marched 10 metres forward and stuff like that. But if it's the opposite way around and Ireland are on top, he's going to be in the opposition's ear and maybe stirring them up, and potentially winning penalties for his team because of people's reactions and stuff like that. So, it's kind of, there's good and bad in that. And then you have Jack Crowley there as well. And I could definitely see a case where maybe Crowley comes on, for, one of the centres rather than direct swap for Prendergast, and have both of them on the field at the same time, or maybe even coming on for one of maybe the wingers and Ringrose moving out to the wing or something like that, and then again having that dual playmaker in the team as well. So gonna be interesting to see where he comes on, but it's an Ireland team that I would have, like, in terms of the number of changes compared to what we normally expect from Ireland, and certainly some of the personnel that have been brought in as well. It's a team that I would have liked to have seen in last year's Six Nations rather than this year. I think now we're really are playing catch up, trying to get all these guys up to speed, and you don't want to be just making changes for the sake of it. You've got to be competitive as well. And, the fact that as a team, a lot of these guys haven't, had that time together. Again, if they had from kind of last year, it may have made, I think a bigger difference. Like seeing this team with most of these guys maybe haven't started for the last year, would make you think, oh, maybe they do have a chance in this one. And Ireland do have a chance. It's just that it's a very slim chance. I think in terms of the two teams, France, again, as I said, just have to play to their potential, I think, and they win the game. I think Ireland have to go like above what we've seen from them, in the last year, especially looking back to November. They've got to raise their game. They've got the players for it, but it's whether, like, collectively they can do that. They need, set piece to go well. Again, locking out the scrum is going to be very important, but also in terms of the line out, you can't kind of have maybe in the first 3 or 4 line outs, like two of them, going wrong, maybe an overthrow and, maybe a swift throw, or like one gets nicked or something like that. Like though all of those have to be kind of up there. They've got to be, 100% on their own ball in the scrum, I think. And they've got to be somewhere in the 90s, I think, on their line out as well. Just to have that base to be able to compete. And after that, then it's all about forwards, getting over the gain line, not being battered backwards, and, protecting the ball at the breakdown, and being switched on when there's transition, because France is so good at attacking off turnover ball. So there's I think a lot for Ireland to get right. And then also it's one of these ones where I think pretty much every chance they get, they've got to take it. They can't leave too many points out there, be it from the tee or from kicking to the corner, turning down 3 points, kicking to the corner, and maybe getting held up over the line, or France forcing a knock on, something like that. They can't have too many situations like that, because they're not going to get, they're basically going to have to take almost every single chance. And then there's still going to have to be some heroic defense on their own line at times as well, I think, to keep France out. The best thing for Ireland, I think, would be to get an early lead and then, kind of just keep that scoreboard ticking over in the second half. One thing I would say that is maybe, something that Ireland didn't have last year compared to this year is that a lot of the Leinster, there's still lots of Leinster players in the team, and a lot of those Leinster players this year, in Champions Cup and in the URC, have had a lot of situations where they've been behind at 60 minutes and they've been able to come back and win the game. And that's not something that we've seen those Leinster players doing in the last kind of 3 or 4 seasons. So that's certainly an extra string to their bow, that if they're in that situation, maybe there's a better, not saying that they're going to do it, but maybe there's a better chance that they can do it. But in terms of prediction for the game, I think it's going to be a home win, France to win. But for me, I'm just hoping that, it's a decent performance from Ireland.